Hi everyone, welcome back to Brookdale Farm. Well, last week we stripped down the carburetor on our international C1300 truck and cleaned it up, ready for a rebuild. This week we are going to put it back together, put it on the truck and hopefully get it running and take it for a drive. So we left off, we'd had it in the sonic cleaner, most of the parts were clean. Then we're going to just give it a quick clean with Carby Clean before we reassemble it. Okay, so we've got all of our parts clean. We got some carburetor and throttle body cleaner. This stuff's brilliant. It takes all the muck off real quick. We've also got our kit from Carb Parts. These guys are in Echuca in Victoria. I'll try and put a link to their website up in the description. They were brilliant. I rang them up with the model number and they knew exactly what I needed. They could tell me what the difference was between the throttle shaft in this carburetor and other ones, just off the top of their head. I'd been looking around for a place to get carby bits for a while and I couldn't find anyone still open here in Western Australia, unfortunately. So I think I'll be going back to these guys. It was packaged well too, so it was kept nice and flat and everything. There's their website down the bottom, but I'll put that up in the description as well. So now there's not a lot in the kit. We'll open this up and if I can get it out one-handed. So, instruction sheet, bundle of gaskets, and you often don't need all of these gaskets. They're often for several different types of carburetor. New throttle pump piston. New needle and seat and little spring clips and stuff like that. And the shaft that was broken. And unfortunately they didn't supply new screws to go in here. I'm a bit surprised about that because they are generally single-use screws and I'm missing one. I've got an old Land Rover carburetor here which hopefully I can get the bits I need, get the screw I need out of. So we can now start reassembling all of this. Okay, so we're going to start by reassembling the main body of our carb. We might as well start with the little brass screw jet that we took out of the top here. So it just goes back in like that. Okay, next we might as well put our main jet back in, and I haven't found my little jet spanner yet, or who I lent it to. So we're just going to use a pair of pliers again, and that goes up through this hole here. Alright, next we can put our plug back in that covers up the main jet. And next we've got our little one-way valve that goes in here for the throttle pump, which is this little tiny one here. So we need to drop this into this hole and just screw this into place as well. Then we can put the other base piece in here, the other base plug in here. Now if you ever get water or something in your carburetor while it's still on, you can actually just undo these to drain the carby. It It's a little bit hard to get in there. You need a fairly short stumpy screwdriver, but that will drain all the water out of your float bowl and all the dirt and sediment that you've got built up in there as well. Okay, next we can put the float back in. So the float and its little pin that goes with it. Now you've got to be careful with this little pin because there's nothing holding it in while you're carrying it round outside the carby. That drops in like that, and then I think we've got a new wire clip to hold that in. So there's our little wire clip. In here too, I didn't see these before. There's two little metal O-rings, metal washers, I think they're aluminium washers, to go under these plugs here. So we should have put them in before we put the plug in. So this little spring clip here is not always very easy to get in. But basically these 2 feet sit on the pin down in here, and then there's a little tab here that the top of the bend sits under. And these can be really fiddly to get into place because you can't actually get in there very easily to do it. Being a spring clip means it's more likely to jump out and hit you in the face than to go in where you want it to. Okay, next we can put in our new needle and seat. So the needle slides in with the needle surface pointing inwards, and this also comes with a new aluminium crush washer. And this just goes in like this. There's nothing holding the needle in, so make sure you don't turn it up the wrong way and drop it all. Once we've got it in, the float holds the needle in place. And just make sure that your float is free and that your needle is also free in there. Okay, next we can put in the 2 little non-return valves, and they have new aluminium crush washers to go on them as well. So that was one for the throttle pump and one in this side here. So the one for the throttle pump was the one that the valve wasn't sticking right up through it. Once again, everything wants to fall off when you're trying to do this. So you sort of got to be pretty accurate at dropping it into the hole in the right spot. And of course these are brass, so the magnetic screwdrivers don't work on them. And the same on the other side with a new crush washer. Alright, that's getting rid of quite a lot of our box of parts. Okay, next we're going to assemble our throttle pump. Now this has a little leather bucket on here, and we just need to be careful when we're putting it in to make sure that the leather bucket is tucked in all the way around and we're not catching it on anything. Next we can put the spring on. Next we need to put the gasket in place, because this next piece goes through the gasket. And then there is a tiny little clip here that holds this all together. So we have to push down and compress the spring, making sure everything is straight and that we're not bending the gasket. Then this little clip sits on there. Now when we operate the throttle, it pulls down on this. This starts out further up. When we operate the throttle, it pulls down on it. That pumps a small amount of petrol straight down the throat of the carburetor. If we push down too hard, we're just operating that on that spring. Now we've got all of those pieces together, we can put the top back on our carburetor. Now these screws on here strip fairly easily in this die cast, so you've just got to be a bit careful that you don't cross thread them or do them up too tight. Particularly the ones that hold the cable on for the choke, because they've got that bit of extra load, they're quite likely to strip. Now there are various gasket compounds you can add to these gaskets, but be careful, a lot of them are dissolved by petrol and form a sort of jelly substance, which then gets stuck in your jets when it breaks down and gives you more problems than it's worth. So I don't usually put any sort of gasket stuff on carburetor gaskets. Alright, we can now sit our next gasket on here, and our little spacer piece on here, and we have another gasket that sits on there. Alright, for the moment we can set this piece aside because we've got to come back to our throttle shaft here. Now, this is our new shaft. This is our old shaft. And this piece goes on this end of it. So this is our idle adjustment screw here. When you turn this in, it just opens the butterfly a little bit and raises the idle. So we're going to start putting the new shaft in next. So the longer end of the shaft here is the one with the fast idle on it. And our shaft sticks through like this. And I've got that on the wrong way around. So this bit here is operated by the choke. When you pull the choke out, it opens up your throttle just a bit too to give you a higher idle when it's cold. So we can put this nut on next. And often these have funny little locking washers underneath them. This one doesn't seem to. So on the other side, this is where the throttle pump connects. This side does actually have a locking nut on it, and it's a bit of an odd shaped mechanism on here. This is where your accelerator pedal connects to. That's where your throttle pump connects to. And I can't remember what connects in there. But we're going to just get this old piece of shaft out next. So spring washer goes back on there. And then our other funny little nut. I've no idea what would have caused this shaft to break. This in the past was used as a fire truck. Maybe they were trying to get it to go faster than it really should have. Okay, now for the slightly tricky bit. We need to get this back in. Now, these are not round, these are slightly oval, because when they're sitting in a round hole at an angle, that means they're blocking it right off. They're also chamfered on the end slightly. So you need to get the chamfer sitting the right way round, or it won't shut off properly at idle. So it goes in this way round and needs to be dropped straight down into the slot in here. And then we should be able to, if we've got it in the middle and the right way round, we should just be able to close the accelerator up like that. Our fast idle is holding us open a little bit, or a slow idle, sorry, screw is holding us open, because you don't ever want this to close 100% or your engine stops. But it is quite hard to get all of the holes lined up exactly. Now we can attempt to put this tiny little screw back in. Once again, getting all the holes lined up can be a little bit tricky. First screw in, and that is working now the way it should do. Okay, so these screws in here are supposed to be single-use screws, and you're supposed to just mushroom over the inside end of them to make sure they don't come undone. Now you really want to support the head side to do that, so we're just going to use this bit of bar in the vise here as an anvil to support them on. And then we just want to get in with a small punch and just mushroom the end over a tiny little bit on these so that they don't vibrate loose while the truck's running. Alright, apparently I didn't push the record button on the camera hard enough. So what we've now done is put the base back on the carburetor. There's just two long cheesehead screws in here to hold that on. We've also put the idle screw back in and set that to the same as what it was when we took it out. So that was mostly on any of these settings, 1.5 turns out will get you running, and then you can set it more accurately after that. We also put the high idle for your choke back on, and the little linkage under here that operates your throttle pump. That's a little bit tricky to get on. There's a new linkage and spring clip that comes with the kit though. So this carby's all back together now. We can go and put it on the truck, and hopefully our truck will run a little bit better than it did before. Well, the carbies are pretty simple to refit on these old trucks. There's a nice lot of room in these engine bays, so you can get to everything. Take the rag off, put the new gasket on, sit the carburetor down in place. There's 2 bolts, 2 nuts and spring washers that go on here. We've got to put the fuel line back on, the accelerator linkage and the vacuum advance retard line around that side. And this will only take me a couple of minutes. And then of course the air cleaner sits on top and the choke cable goes on here. I'll get all of that done, get some water in it, and we'll come back and see if it's going to run. Well, that started and ran amazingly well for a first start. I'd forgotten that I had turned the low idle right down to nothing when I was putting it, trying to do those little screws up on the butterfly. But I think we'll lift the idle a little bit, we'll take it out for a drive and warm it up, and then set the low idle mixture. But I think I'm pretty happy with the way that's going. Well, it's nice to have the little truck going again and running quite nice and smoothly. We even managed to get a little bit of something resembling brakes on it, which is also very nice. I had hoped that I'd be able to fit 4 bales of hay on it, but it's looking a little bit full with 3 bales on it. That's all right. It'll still make it quicker than carrying everything back one at a time on the forks on the tractor. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little video. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye!